Yeah.
We don't want you reaching for anything.
Right.
Delete button or weapon.
Right.
We'll often go over, but I have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. So, but I don't expect we'll go that long.
At 9 o'clock? Yeah, I'm sure we won't talk for an hour. Although, actually, Mike knows me. I probably could.
I can do it.
Yeah, I can't. I have to leave. I really need to duck out by like 8:30.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. This is supposed to be a 15-minute deal. So,
Okay.
We'll make it short. We do need to mention Westlaw at the top, but we'll save that for another episode.
I want to try to look at these things you dropped in the chat and see what you're.
I actually don't know how Court Listener works. Karen, do you know how that recap archive? Somebody downloads it, it's archived, and you don't have to pay for it. Then it's just saved. You don't have to pay a user fee.
Yeah, we used to do that at Mitchell. It was a little add-on or plug-on or something. So anytime you downloaded a document off of Pacer, it would automatically then be added to recap. And I suppose if it already existed there, it wouldn't be duplicated. And that was a way of sort of building a secondary Pacer. And so when you didn't want to pay, which people don't want to pay, you would always check recap first to see if the document you were looking for was already there. And if it wasn't, then you'd go into Pacer. And I think it's onerous, but it was just this kind of like sort of on the ground attempt to reclaim public information by the public. I mean, they presented it as this big kind of democratic effort.
Is that still a thing?
Well,
No.
Mike just pulled this off of
Court
recap,
Listener,
didn't
yeah.
you? Yeah.
Hold what?
Mhm.
Oh, I
That
don't. I'm
top-
sorry. I'm not seeing it. What?
Oh, in the chat, there's
Oh, that Court Listener
that
there.
courtlistener.com. I see. I thought it used to be on something called recap.org or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah,
maybe
so
I'm
there's
in agreement now with Court Listener.
a couple of branding issues there maybe, but there's the Free
Oh.
Law Project, which I think is the umbrella organization, which does the Court Listener, and then under that is also the recap. Pacer spelled backwards.
Pacer threw up a new interface this week.
Oh,
I'm
did
like,
they?
wait, what? But you know what?
There's
It's
so many
just-
things to that.
Yeah, it prettifies the landing screen, and then you go into those kind of unintelligible court websites.
Yeah,
where
those
it's
are- yeah.
unclear that you can search for documents. You have to click on some rather unintuitive links before you can get to it.
And I haven't been following the litigation around. Have you been? I mean, that's also a subject for another day, probably.
Yeah.
Is the litigation around fees for Pacer?
Right. I mean, I know it's happening, but I don't think anything big has happened lately. I haven't been reading about it recently, but I know what's going on.
Fantastic. Let's get started officially. Want to welcome Michelle Hayes. We'll do a quick round of introductions. I'm Mike, researcher with Gray Paper Legal.
I'm Karen Westwood, director of the Hennepin County Law Library.
I'm Michelle Hayes. I am a managing attorney at the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office.
Michelle is joining us today because one of our most interesting questions of the week has been fielding I guess questions from friends or colleagues more than patrons maybe about what actually happens on the ground during a search warrant with all that's going on in the news. The other quick news item I'll just quickly mention just officially at the top of the hour here is that yes, we've seen the new Westlaw Precision It was announced yesterday officially, I guess. So haven't done a deep dive in yet. I wanted to ask Karen though quickly, how did you feel about the fact that this was not announced at AALL, which it was shocking to me. This is the whole new version. I was expecting a new feature. This is the new Westlaw, and it was launched
Right.
kind of undercover, just through Ambrosia's website and Gene O'Grady, but not the usual play.
I know, I wondered that too. So the two things I thought were maybe law librarians aren't as influential of a market for Thomson Reuters anymore, or they were aiming for the AALL annual meeting in July and they missed their mark and weren't ready to unveil it. What do you think, Mike? Which one is it?
I don't know, actually. I doubt that Westlaw would ever give short shrift to the law librarians. That just seems completely unlikely to me. They're your favorite folks. So yeah, I can't believe that's the case, but I don't know. We'll investigate that further when we cover what actually is in Westlaw Precision. Very interesting play. They're leveraging editors, right? Not the technology, but the people on this one. So very interested to see what how that works and whether or not that's a good play for them. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah, their claims for improvements are in some really interesting areas. If they can produce what they're promising, that would be really, really interesting. Yep.
And you've got a demo coming up. So
yep, I'll get a demo and then I'll get a trial password and do some digging. If y'all have anything you want me to check out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I'll have to pay for it. Looking forward to that. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not just an advancement over the old. It's a whole new product, which I have to pay for. So yeah, that's too bad. Anyway, Michelle.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. We're looking around for just to answer this question, and I'm not sure quite where to start. But maybe you can just tell us what is a search warrant? What are we talking about here at the very, very most basic, foundational level?
So sure. So a search warrant is a judge's authorization to go looking for items, right? So a search warrant has to be requested, and what you just shared was Trump's the affidavit for the search. And so obviously the Trump situation is a federal case. I practice in state court, but they are very similar. Some of the stuff, some of the details are different, but I mean, this is basic constitutional Fourth Amendment law. You can't search without a search warrant based upon probable cause, which lists particularized reasons to believe that a criminal, that an item that you're looking for will be found in a specific place. So that is what a search warrant is. A judge has to review it, make a determination about probable cause, and then the judge will authorize the warrant. Sometimes the judge changes the warrant or tells the affiant to change the warrant. Sometimes there's different ways in which a warrant can be executed. Minneapolis, we're the hotbed of all kinds of stuff. So so there was like there were no-knock warrants, there were nighttime warrants, there still are nighttime warrants. And specifically you were talking about drug cases. I do a lot of drug litigation, and the affiants are almost always police officers in my experience, or agents, FBI agents, tax, IRS agents, whatever. And so if there's a particular reason that they need something specific in their execution of the warrant, that they can ask for a no-knock warrant, and they have to explain why. What are the exact reasons that a no-knock warrant is particularly required in this circumstance? A nighttime warrant, why it is regular that, I mean, I would say, let's see, a very substantial number of my cases arise out of search warrants that are executed at 6 a.m. Right? Like everybody's asleep. There's not a lot of danger for the cops. They come in, everyone's startled. That's when Amir Locke was killed. He just happened to be sleeping right next to a gun and maybe grabbed for it or not. But that's the reason they do that, right? Everyone's kind of like, it's almost like they're tranquilized, they're like a slab.
Yeah.
Hey,
So,
Michelle,
yeah.
I have a question. So I thought, what great timing for this week, Mike Lindell, Hardee's in Mankato,
Right.
presented with an FBI search warrant. So I did a little research, but he wasn't presented with a warrant. He was presented with a subpoena. So that led me off on this other tangent. So I'm wondering if you can help me understand in what circumstances you'd use a subpoena in a criminal case to get documents or data, and when you would use a search warrant.
That's totally interesting. I didn't investigate that, but what I would certainly say is, I mean, he was in a public place, right? So they didn't, that was another thing. He's in the, Hardee's is getting a lot of uncalled for attention here. So, I mean, a subpoena would be you bring, come to a particular place, or you can get a subpoena for an item or a document. They would not have been able to search that phone without a search warrant. So there would have had to have been somewhere here the authorization to look in that phone for specific, what criminal stuff, why do they think it's there, what, why is there a particularized belief that there's a reasonable person would find this item, this kind of information inside that. So that would be my argument.
Would it make a difference? It sounded like they subpoenaed that phone because there's another criminal case going on in Colorado against Tina Peters that's already been begun. So does that temporal piece matter? That, like, do you execute a search warrant before you bring charges because you're trying to find evidence, and then the subpoena is part of a discovery process, or is that not really how it goes?
So we're in an area where this is federal stuff now, so I'm not 100% sure. And I do think that way back, like the Patriot Act or whatever it was after 9/11 kind of opened up all kinds of new ways to search, and to search kind of secretly or under seal or whatever. So I think there is definitely a procedure for getting information prior to a charge in federal court. Not in state court. In state court, I mean, state court police can investigate and get, do their search warrants and stuff, but they can't get a subpoena. That's not I have never seen a subpoena pre-charging in a state case.
Gotcha.
But also this Mike Lindell situation, I mean, there is an active case. So maybe his phone is being subpoenaed. I mean, it sounds like perhaps it's being subpoenaed for this other woman's case, right?
Right. Yeah,
So,
I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting though.
So can I go ahead and share my screen?
Please do.
Here's what I do if I all right.
You want me to permit that to happen?
Well, let me actually click the button that says share. That might help. And then here we go. So I, being a librarian, when I want to understand this kind of thing, I always think of, is there a book on it? And so we have a package on Westlaw that includes a bunch of treatises. So I start typing search warrant and I see, oh, hey, search warrant law desk book. And I click on it and it's super interesting. So that reminded me that there's constitutional law as sort of the underpinnings of search warrants and the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. And then there are all these things that Michelle just summarized for us so nicely about timeliness of execution and nighttime searches and so forth. Then there are these appendices. So here's a little librarian tip. If you look at appendices and see something like this, you have one appendix that talks about US specific jurisdictional requirements, federal requirements, and then an appendix 2 that has state specific stuff. You know that each state has different law around this. And it was remarkable to me, Michelle, how, right, everyone is subject to the US Constitution, So the fundamental law is the same, but there are all kinds of different rules about who can issue a search warrant, what you have to prove. Do you have to have a written affidavit? Can you just call a judge? It varies really widely from state to state. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to do some comparative work, you can oftentimes find a book that will have an appendix that does a lot of heavy lifting for you.
I thought on this
That's-
treatise as well, there was maybe a chapter at the beginning that talked about the actual process of executing the warrant.
Yeah,
Places to be searched, things to be searched.
right.
So very, very practical.
And then from a research point of view, I wanted to know, like, are search warrants public? Can I, as a citizen, find them? And so in the appendices, it lists state by state where they're sort of presumed public. And we were reading about the Mar-a-Lago search warrant, that it was issued under seal. So, different jurisdictions have different processes for requesting that the warrants be under seal.
That is something that we know about. In Hennepin County, when a search warrant is executed, the law enforcement officer is supposed to file it with the court within 10 days. And they filed the search warrant and the receipt, the inventory receipt. So the list of what they collected. And we've used that in litigation because, of course, oftentimes they don't find anything and we don't know about it. And so a particular officer might have done 20 search warrants and only one of them ever found. So they violated 20 people's, homes, and only one of those ever found anything illegal. But we would never know about the other 19 because they're not charged. Of course, the problem, and I'm sure that you could probably find the answer in this Westlaw search warrant desk book that you're showing. The remedy is nothing. So if the officers don't file the search warrants, I mean, there's really, what are we going to do with? There's no, oh, you should have filed it. That's it. There's no, we're not getting a case dismissed because other warrants weren't filed or it was filed on day 11. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think they call that a ministerial error. And so it's like, yeah, you just made a kind of clerical mistake. So
Exactly.
It's not ever the subject of a 1983 claim or civil rights action of any kind, is it? Is that just a pie in the sky?
That's great. Who's going to do that? Who's going to pay
Yeah.
for that lawyer to do that? That's really, I mean, as a public defender, we're doing the things that we absolutely have to do but we can't go and bring a 1983 in federal court. None of us practice in federal court. It's sort of, we want a lot more time and a lot more resources, and let's fix everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you took kind of a different approach when you were confronted with, so what happens in a search warrant?
But I was interested in maybe some of the social science research. You and I were talking about Policy Commons, the Social Science Research Network, SSRN, which is a great place to find law review articles before they're published even. So those are very nice. And then we did a Google Scholar search as well. Interestingly, the results are very, very similar across all of those platforms. A search for search warrants near raid. I use that term raid because we had some discussion about whether or not is it a raid or is it a search. I use the term raid maybe to trigger a search that might deliver us more I don't know, colloquial fact patterns. So something.
Mike, remind me what the Google Boolean term is.
Oh,
Was
yeah,
it
it's around in all caps. And then space, and then 10 in parentheses. You can do Boolean on Google Scholar, and then RAID. Yeah, the Google algorithm doesn't work the same in patents and Scholar as it does on regular Google. So you can.
Right. So we're in Google Scholar here. Yeah.
Well, just to be clear, search warrant is a term in the Constitution. It's a legal term. Raid, I mean, goodness. That's like a term. I mean,
Yeah.
Pokemon has the word raid. Like that's just a very, that's not a legal term. And when I was looking at what you put in here, I mean, it sounds like a raid is more of an exigent circumstance situation. You hear a person screaming in the room, and so they're going to raid the house. They're not going to, I just have never heard of a raid with sort of a search warrant.
Well, you know, the reason I thought of it is because it was in the news that there were a lot of folks saying, well, should we really talk about it as a raid? Did they really raid Mar-a-Lago? They executed a search warrant. Is that what we should be talking about? We talk about Breonna Taylor. You know, that definitely, you know, that feels more like a raid, I think, you know, so, but the term was used in this case just to deliver something that might give us that kind of boots on the ground fact pattern that we were after, because it was more of a colloquial term. I think I just got lucky here, actually.
Mike, remind me which article did
I think it might have been the
this one?
yeah, the white collar one. But and actually, so if you do this on Google Scholar, the link you clicked on will take you to the Hine Online, I think, or kind of depending on which link it is, and might require you to purchase it. That link on the right side gives you free access to the
right.
So that PDF link will just take you right to the free resource. But yeah, this article, interestingly, outlined that fact pattern. And as I say, I think I kind of got lucky here, actually, but it outlined the what happens when the FBI agents raid a corporate office. It was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if the readers can actually see that, but it just kind of delivers this scenario. On an otherwise routine day, the normal operations of a small business are interrupted by the sudden appearance of 20 FBI agents. And then they just kind of march through this description, you know, the manager, you know, is in a panic and contacts corporate counsel, and what should you tell them to do? And I thought it was interesting because, you know, Mike and I were hearing from people and reading in the news, oh, you know, isn't it terrible how they executed this search warrant? It's not like it was drugs, it was just papers. You know, why were they so, you know, fill in the blank? And so it's just interesting to read, well, yeah, it kind of doesn't matter if it's drugs or papers. The people executing a warrant are going to tell you to keep your hands visible and don't leave, and various other things. So
I've seen many, the execution of search warrants is not pretty. People are usually in their house. And I mean, the ones that I see on a routine criminal case, people are sitting in their house, a very loud, you know, police search warrant. And then they come into the house, they have large guns. People are scared. Everybody's yelled at and told to sit on the ground. Frequently their hands are zip tied. And one of the officers is tasked with keeping an eye on these people, including children, including like elderly people, or, you know, a lot of the stuff I hear about, people are in wheelchairs and or they have injuries. You know, it's a really rough situation. And, you know, and then other officers will because sometimes we have the access to body cams before they go in. So they're talking about who's going to go where. They have a whole plan. They meet like a block away. Who's going which bedroom. They have a map of the house. Like they know exactly who's going to do what.
Yeah, it is scary. Even, I mean, even reading this paragraph of the office space feels a little chilling, I would think. Not that there's even an even comparison there, but
well, but they also, you know, I mean, officers who fill out search warrants and affidavits know exactly how, well, sometimes they know exactly how to write these things so that they get the proper authorization. Because if they end up finding something in an area that they didn't list in their search warrant, you can absolutely guarantee that I'm going to argue that you were not supposed to look there.
Right.
If you're looking for a cache of rifles and then you go and look in my purse and you find drugs, well, you weren't supposed to be looking in my purse because what you were looking for could not have possibly been in my purse. So they are very careful, you know, to list documents. Documents can be folded up. They could be put in the tiniest of spaces. You know, drug dealers often put their plans in Microsoft Word. So we need all their computers and
Yeah.
drug notes are often, in the phone. So we're going to need to take every phone and electronic device that we find.
Yeah. And that really, that came out in this Mike Lindell thing too, where he was like, everything's on my phone, which
Yeah.
seemed a little overstated, except that, I think about people, right? If you're in a home and everyone's phone is taken, you can't call into work, you can't check your work schedule, you can't notify the I mean, you have nothing, your calendar's gone,
Well,
and
and
it impacts everyone, right?
what I was just like literally last week dealing with is that someone's phone and computers were taken. And then in order to access anything, often you need to reset your password and you have the two system authentication.
Right.
But they're going to send a text to the phone that the police have. So you can't actually then access your stuff anywhere because you can't get to the second thing that you need to get.
Your
To
multi-factor authentication isn't
That's it.
broken because, you don't have, some of the folks were talking about access to justice and legal tech are also saying, mobile is one avenue because even if you don't have a place to live, sometimes you'll have mobile access. And if you've ever been to the, Mall of America transit station at 5 a.m. in February,
Yeah.
you can see, that's true, and
Yeah.
so that it's such a critical tool. Hard to imagine the test. What is the old test? If you leave your home and you forgot it, do you go back for it? That's a device that you truly actually need. I think everybody.
Well,
Right.
this makes me think this is a whole new area. This is also a very interesting area. I mean, when people take when your phone is collected as evidence or something. I mean, the information in that phone, everywhere you've been, every cell tower that it has hit, it's gonna collect information. Your phone is collecting so much information. Right. And that is, they're going to get it because it's on your phone, but that's not what they were, necessarily looking for. I mean, we just, one of the people I supervised just had a murder trial, and it was largely based on the geocaching, of a cell phone and where the body was found. And it just, that's a burgeoning area of litigation.
Yeah, we had a CLE course presented by John Carney of Carney Forensics back in the spring called Mobile is the New DNA. And he had been working on an actual innocence case where, he says most DNA on file now has been tested. So organizations are trying to figure out like what is other technology that can help prove actual innocence. And he said, there's a lot of information, just as you were saying, Michelle, on people's mobile devices that can, as well as work to convict them, can work to exonerate them if it can be shown like where they were or what text messages were exchanged or, a variety of other things.
Yeah.
I think we've heard of Mr. Carney's competitor, Mark Lanterman, gives regular CLEs as well. He does this presentation. You may be familiar with Ashley Madison, this website that they said was secure, where if you wanted a hookup from if you wanted an extramarital thing going on, you could register with this site, and they were breached. And Mark Lanterman's presentation began with, well, I know as a matter of fact that two of the attendees here today are registrants, Ashley Madison. I'm not going to out you in this. So yeah. So
Really?
Yeah.
Mark.
Those are fun moments in it. Maybe we're past our 15 minutes. Any final thoughts from folks? Anything we missed? Michelle, I meant to ask, are there any resources that your team relies on that our listeners might be interested in?
We no, not anything beyond what you know about. I mean, when we are challenging search warrants and litigating them, it is in state court on a standard search warrant. It's very hard to challenge them. In order to challenge a search warrant, you have to make a showing, and then a judge has to authorize what's called a Franks hearing. And then there was one that happened that was in the news maybe a year or two ago. It was my office, public defenders. And it turns out that the search warrant had been based on a confidential we could go on and on. Law enforcement will rely on informants. And so they say, oh, this confidential, reliable informant or confidential informant, those are different terms of art, gave us information. And so, we have to try to pierce the confidential informant, find out who they are. Law enforcement often doesn't tell us. And even if we ask and bring motions, they won't. But we did have one successful Franks hearing recently where the judge said, I think you lied on your search warrant, Pat. And so the case got dismissed.
Yeah.
But generally search warrants are a tough battle for us. And what we do is we are searching everything we can on cops, and like a Google search, and trying to find information in the police databases. There's sort of like Minnesota, the Communities Against Police Brutality that keep files on law enforcement officers. So we try to get as much as we can. A lot of that's been hidden from us, but we try to get that information so we can explain to the judge why we need more information, why we need to challenge this warrant. This cop is not credible.
That's interesting to hear, Michelle, because I did look then at the Minnesota statutes around search warrants thinking, well, this is great. I'm just going to read all, these notes of decisions, cases that have interpreted the search warrant. Yeah, and that's exactly, I'm like, there are no interpretive cases or one or something. So it apparently doesn't get litigated up into the Court of Appeals with success.
Not very often at all. But if there are cases, they're very fact specific, and
Right.
Very cool. Michelle, thank you so much. This is really great. We'll be sure to add the resources you mentioned. Very curious to learn more about those databases you were referring to. We'll drop those into the show notes. They'll be available at graypaperlegal.com on our website. Next week, we'll be back live, probably talking about the new Westlaw, but who knows what the most interesting question will be next week, but we look forward to seeing you then. Karen, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good weekend.
Take care.